Hi there, my name's Catherine and today I'm going to be talking about books that I read when I was wee that don't get spoken about enough, that were way underappreciated and kind of lived in the shadow of Harry Potter. I've picked 3 children's book series that I was obsessed with when I was younger that I think just deserve a bit more recognition and that I would reread again, that I have reread one of them, and if I ever have kids in my future will 100% be on their shelf. I have a bit of fantasy, I have a bit of history, I have a whole lot of good times. The first series I'm going to talk about is one that is very, very, very close to my heart. It will always be a deep, deep love of mine. I was gifted the first one by my aunt and uncle when I was wee when it first came out. Me and my mum read it and both became obsessed with it. That's a theme with any books I read when I was little. Like the other book series I'm going to talk about, my mum also read and was also obsessed with them. I could probably root my love of reading further back than this, but it was this series that really cemented me as a reader and made me want to become a writer eventually. And that is the Sisters Grimm series. Look how stunning these books are. Are these not the most beautiful books you've ever seen in your life? One of my most prized possessions is this book series that I have in whole. I reread these quite recently, like a year and a half ago, and I had all of these, but I was missing the last one and I have no idea where my copy went, so I hunted this copy down on eBay and bought it because they've come out with new covers now that are not as nice, and I couldn't live with myself if I didn't have the complete set. So these are all my original copies except this one, and you can tell looking at it, I don't know if you can see, but you can see how old it is from like little water stain marks and dirt, that makes me sound so grotty, but you know what happens, like, especially with kids' books lying about. But anyway, I'm gonna sit them down now because I can't hold these the whole time. My wrist is gonna fall off. I'll hold up the first one. These were my favourite thing in the world when I was younger, and I was the only person I knew and still know, apart from my mum, who has read them. I don't know if they were bigger in America because it is a American author. I'm pretty sure he's American. I remember one time seeing, I think it was the second book in my school library, and freaking out because I'd never seen them anywhere except my own house. And I don't know why they weren't talked about more, because these are incredible books. Anyway, let's talk about them. These are written by Michael Buckley and illustrated by Peter Ferguson, and these were a series of 9 novels published from 2005 through to 2012. These are fantasy mystery novels with like elements of horror, I'd say, in them, but obviously they're children's books. It's not like a gore horror or anything, but some of it is a bit creepy and scary. It follows 2 sisters called Sabrina and Daphne Grimm, whose parents have disappeared with no trace. And so for about a year, these 2 sisters have been flung about different foster homes in the care system, being neglected, being abused, and every care home or foster home they've been to, they've run away or been kicked out. So they're troublemakers, but they've also fallen on really hard times and they're just like trying to survive essentially, because this care system is pretty fucked up. But they eventually end up in the care of their long lost grandmother, who they have never heard of. I'm pretty sure they think she's dead. And so this grandmother's discovered and they go live with her in a town called Ferryport Landing. They immediately think that their grandmother's a fraud, especially Sabrina, the older sister, does not trust the grandmother because the grandmother is convinced that the entire populace of Fairyport Landing, apart from the Grimm family, is made up of fairy tale characters who are alive, and they are called ever afters in this world. She basically explains to the sisters that their family are descendants of the Brothers Grimm, who we all know and love. And the Brothers Grimm essentially trapped the ever afters in this town, and the family has stayed there ever since to help the ever afters acclimate to the human world and have become kind of fairy tale detectives, just helping out these ever afters in their everyday problems. You soon discover that whilst some of the ever afters are friends of the Grimm family, a lot of them are not, because they resent the fact that the Grimms have trapped them in this small town with no means of escape. The magical curse barrier that has trapped them within the town remains intact as long as one Grimm remains in the town. So there's a lot of people in the town who want rid of the Grimms, and this manifests into an overarching plot that follows this evil group of ever afters who call themselves the Scarlet Hand, who are basically trying to get rid of the Grimm family so that they can be free into the rest of the human world. They were the cause of Sabrina and Daphne's parents' disappearance and are present throughout all the books. Basically every mystery that the two sisters and their friends have to solve is linked to the Scarlet Hand. And one of the big mysteries going throughout the book is not knowing who the leader is. And let me tell you, the payoff of who the leader is blew my mind when I was little. And I reread these recently and I remembered who it was, and it still blew my mind. And honestly, rereading it, knowing who it was really fun. I think the main appeal of this book series is how fantastic the characters are. Not just the Grimm family and like their main cast of characters that help them out, but the supporting cast too. I think Buckley did such a good job because obviously he had access to all of these pre-established fairy tale characters and he could have done anything with them, and he really did. When you read it, you clearly can tell how much fun he had kind of twisting character tropes, kind of taking readers' expectations and twisting them. So taking a hero and making them villains, or taking villains and making them turn into heroes. I really appreciated, especially rereading them as an adult, I really appreciated the way that he really trusted that the readers were intelligent and ran with that and gave each character such interesting and rich backstories, I felt. Like I mentioned, the book has illustrations by Peter Ferguson throughout, and they're just so stunning. I love the style of the illustrations so much. And even like, just like I said earlier, the aesthetic of them, it looks so like kind of vintagey and like just like it is a fairy tale itself, and all the book covers are like that, and each one is its own colour. I will say, I think these two colours don't match the rest of them, and that kind of frustrates me, but I'm not here to hate on it. I'm here only to love, but I will say that. My favourite book of the series was book 5, which is called Magic and Other Misdemeanors. Oh wait, look at these frayed edges as well of the paper. I love it. Anyway, yeah, book 5, it's got time travel in it, it's got some good romance elements between Sabrina and Puck from Midsummer Night's Dream, which isn't a fairy tale, but I'll let that slide. I think this really kind of planted the seed for my obsession with enemies to lovers romance stories because of Puck and Sabrina, honestly. Although they're not my favourite ship in the whole book series. Uncle Jake and Briar Rose. And if you've read these books, you know how that ends. And I don't want to talk about it. I'm not even going to talk about it. This is a video of happiness, not tragedy. Like I said, I reread these recently, but I'll definitely reread them in my future. I love them until the end of time. I think they're fantastic. But yeah, if I have kids, they're getting forced to read this. Forced. The second book series I'm going to be talking about is another fantasy. Sticking with the fantasy theme, it's the Septimus Heap fantasy series. This is book 1, Magic. Unfortunately, I don't have the other books in the series. They're back at my family home in Scotland, but I'm visiting in a couple of weeks, and I'm gonna maybe just like not take a lot of stuff with me so that I can fill my bag up with the books to take back down, because I've not reread this book since I was wee, and I really have been wanting to read it recently because I loved it so much. Obviously, else would I be talking about it then? This is written by Angie Sage, and it was 7 novels from 2005 to 2013. This series revolves around the character of Septimus Heap, who is the 7th son of the 7th son, and this gives him magical powers. But as a baby, he was separated from his family at birth and placed into the army, I think. It's been a while since I've read it, so like the details are fuzzy in my head. And he doesn't find out who he is or who his family is until later on in his life in this book. But when he does find out who he is and that he has magical powers, he becomes apprenticed to the extraordinary wizard who is like top dog in this world. And she is called Marcia Overstrand, I think. One of the other main characters is his adopted sister, Jenna, who was found on the same day that he went missing by his family, and it turns out she's princess of the castle, so she has to adapt to this whole new world. I remember really loving Jenna, Marcia and Septimus as characters. I think I really looked up to Marcia as like an adult character because she had dark curly hair, and my mum has dark curly hair. I just always was like, I think I just really looked to her as like a motherly figure because she looked like my mum in my head. And then I loved Jenna because she was kind of like a girl I wanted to be. I think in the book she's described as having like violet eyes, and I was so obsessed with having violet eyes then. From what I remember, like amongst all the like dark plots and adventures and magic, it's about family love, and it's quite warm and cozy. And I remember the world building in this is so strong, like it's like stepping into a whole other world, which was so exciting to do when you were younger. It's still exciting to do as an adult, but I personally find it more difficult to. I remember I was making notes for this video and what I wanted to say I loved about these books, and I remembered specifically loving the third one called Physic the most. I just remember being really obsessed with that book, but I could only remember like little bits about it. Like I think at one point there's a siege in the castle, and Jenna's like interacting with a ghost of a queen, so I looked up the plot, and wouldn't you know it, there's time travel in that book as well. So I definitely have a type for stories I liked when I was younger. I loved magic and I loved going back in time. But yeah, I just thought that was really interesting because that was not planned at all. That both of my favourite books in those series were the ones that focused on time travel. It's not a shock because my favourite TV show of all time is Lost, and my favourite season of Lost is season 5, the time travel season. It's all coming together in my head that I just like sci-fi. But that's not news. I knew I liked sci-fi. I'm not having an epiphany right now. I like when there's evidence to back things up, you know? I made a note here as well in front of me about illustrations in this book, and it doesn't have like illustrations like in Sisters Grimm, but it does have like illustrations at the start of each chapter, which have stayed in my memory. Oh, I think that's Jenna. I think that's meant to be Jenna. So if you're looking for an alternative to Harry Potter especially, I think this is a really good one. Especially like a lot of people don't want to read Harry Potter anymore because of the J.K. Rowling stuff going on, which I get completely wanting to take a step back from Harry Potter. If you are wanting to take a step back but still want a really fun children's fantasy book series to get into, try this. Try it. You won't be disappointed. We're moving swiftly on from fantasy, but we're keeping with the mystery, and we're moving into the history. These are the Roman Mysteries books by Caroline Lawrence, and I'm going to swiftly put them back down before I knock myself or anyone else out. I'm missing the first book in the series. The books I showed you are all complete except for the first one, which is really annoying, and I want to replace it. Also, which one is it? Yeah, the third one. You can see here, my dog got into this book when I was younger, so nice memories of Dada for you there. The Roman Mysteries by Caroline Lawrence. There are 17 full novels. There is also many side stories published as well, and they were published from 2001 to 2009. Throughout the whole series, it takes place in various places around the Mediterranean. So it starts off in Ostia, it goes to places like Rome and Greece. I think it goes to Egypt, various other places. And it's set during the Roman Empire. And it follows 4 children called Flavia, Nubia, Jonathan and Lupus as they solve a different mystery each book. And along the way they grow up into teenagers, and it's very like coming of age, found family themes. It was adapted into a CBBC TV show from 2007 to 2008. There was 2 seasons of it, and it was so good. It had a really good theme song, and it was really quite accurate to the books. One of my strongest memories was of me and my mum being really excited because they were making it into a TV show, but one of the episodes was coming out before we were going on holiday and driving up to visit my gran during the night. Instead of waiting to watch it like after it aired like normal people would, we sat down and made the whole family wait for us to watch this half-hour episode of TV show before we could get in the car and leave to go on holiday. That is how committed we were to the books and the show. We just loved it. So yeah, like I said, these books had a really found family feeling to them between the 4 characters. I loved the characters, I loved the relationships that kind of developed throughout the series, the friendships between the 4 of them especially, but also the romantic relationships that kind of begin to evolve the older they get. I was clearly always a romantic at heart because anything I liked when I was younger, I feel like I always liked a romantic element of it. Nubia was always my favourite character because she was so kind and loving, and I think she had such a good character arc of really coming into her own and growing in confidence after her traumatic start in the books as a slave. That being said, all 4 of these characters go through really extraordinary growth, which is so fun to read about. I think Flavia, from what I remember, she can be quite annoying, strong-willed and stubborn, which is quite annoying to read about sometimes, but is a good character to read about as well. And it's fun seeing her kind of like make mistakes, learn from them, be held accountable for them. I think the author studied classics at university. I'm not too sure, but she definitely studied something at university to do with history and arts and stuff. And you can tell reading it is so atmospheric. It's like stepping back in time and walking through the hot streets of Rome and things like that. It's really immersive. This book in particular, this is the second book, Secrets of Vesuvius. I have such a strong memory of our family being on holiday in Italy and me having this book and reading it, and just it kind of like just added to the whole experience being in the same country whilst reading it when I was wee. It gave like a proper immersive fun experience, which I've clearly held on to in my head because like I can feel it. You know when you have memories like that where you can like actually feel what you were feeling at that moment, the sensations and everything. And she also adds in like historical figures who actually existed that they interact with, which is really fun. So you can kind of read in the book and then I not necessarily recognise the name, but I Google it and realise that he was actually a famous philosopher. I reread the first, I've reread the first 3 recently, and was really enjoying them, but then just didn't continue. And I think I do want to continue rereading them, because I barely remember what happens towards the end of the series. It's been that long, and there were so many books that they all kind of melded into each other. But I think I ended up enjoying the latter books more when I was younger because they grew a bit more mature. Like while I was growing a bit more mature, so it was like quite fun to grow up with the characters in that way. But alas, I didn't want to go on and on about too many books I liked when I was younger, because there's quite a few. I really like Series of Unfortunate Events as well, but everyone knows about them. I really want to just focus on children's books that I never hear other people talking about, and I don't know if it's just because I'm sheltered. I knew people who had read, or I at least knew another person who had read Roman Mysteries, but the other two, it was just me and my mum who I knew had read them. I really like rereading books from my childhood as an adult. It makes me feel comforted. Like if I'm feeling low, it's like putting on your favourite jumper or getting a hot water bottle and like cozying up in bed. It just feels like familiar and nice and can really alleviate some of the stress. So I highly suggest it. And if you've not read any of these books, check them out. Check them out, they're well worth it. I really do highly recommend, especially Sisters Grimm. That book series really altered my brain chemistry and formed me into who I am today. So maybe don't read them actually. Maybe that's not a good advertisement. Okay, thanks so much for watching. I'm not sure what the next video will be, but maybe I'll see you then. Okay, bye.